Association are co-hosts tonight. On my left I have John Howell MP, and on my right I have Jake Berry MP and Warren Alexander, the Chief Executive of the Charity Retail Association. Martin Blackwell of the ATCM was due to join us, but unfortunately sends his apologies, he's had last minute problems getting here. If anyone's tweeting, the hashtag is #RPFringe, and you will have the pleasure of seeing your tweets on the screen over there. Right, the discussion on Beyond Portas, the future of high streets and town centres. And this is a discussion that we've been facilitating further to Mary Portas's review, which was published in December of last year. There are a number of challenges faced by city centres, market towns, local high streets, neighbourhood parades, etc., etc. And the Portas High Street Review urged government to consider how changes in policy can cultivate more lively, social and diverse commercial spaces. And not just commercial spaces, multi-purpose town centres that move beyond their retail function alone. And this is something that we at ResPublica have been working on for a while. The Portas Review reflected recommendations of our report, The Right to Retail, which I think copies are at the back. The report recommended a community right to try, which would extend the Localism Act's right to buy to those who may simply want to make use of an empty property but do not have the resources to own it themselves. And that was published in 2011, and I believe we were one of the few organisations to be cited in the Portas Review itself. We've been taking our work forward on high streets, and there are now 27 Portas pilot areas, which makes this area really interesting. Initiatives such as, I think there's one on youth mentoring for young people in the community, young entrepreneurs, and that's in Liverpool, or Ashford, which has a local market offering people the opportunity to have a stall for a tenner. These things are really exciting initiatives that have the potential to transform our town centres. So the discussion today will consider how policy should address the unique assets that each town, place and high street has to offer, and how town centres can be fit for purpose and suit multifunctional social centres as well as their retail function. How can government, local authorities and business foster a more prosperous and diverse high street? And how can town centres, through all of the above, be revived and continue their role as hearts of local communities, and how do various local actors help this process? So I'm first going to ask Jake Berry MP to share his thoughts. Jake is PPS to Grand Chaps, and since being elected as Member of Parliament in 2010, he has backed the business sector and works with regional authorities to secure the regeneration of town centres. He ensures the voices of local business leaders are heard within the policy-making process. Jake has spoken in Parliament on subjects of industry, skilled apprentices and postal services reform as well. And before entering politics, Jake specialised in housing and development law. So over to you, Jake.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that introduction. It always concerns me when people read a biography that I provided. If anyone knows something, that's probably not true. But I just thought I'd talk briefly about the area I represent, actually, which I have the great privilege of representing Rossendale and Darwen in East Lancashire. And we are made up of market towns, and I mean market towns. We've got fantastic food retailers on our market. We have a 3-day market, a 5-day market. But we also see in those towns large supermarkets. So I'm going to focus on those two things, about that unfair competition between the small business trying to keep the town centre going and the large supermarket, often out of town, dragging customers away. Now, I had the great privilege of working with the party chairman, Grand Chaps, when he was leading the Portas project. And I think actually what we were most surprised about was the passion that every member of Parliament felt for their whole area. And in fact, I think virtually every MP made an application to become a Portas pilot town. In fact, some MPs like me made 2 applications to become Portas pilot town, one on each side of their constituency. The Prime Minister asked Mary Portas to start her work in May 2011. She came out with a fantastic report, and I think the government accepted every single one of her recommendations about how we can reinvigorate our high street. We're Conservatives, we believe in competition, so not every bid could win, but we have seen some fantastic bids going forward. But we also now have the Portas Plus project, where MPs working with their town teams can lead the regeneration of their towns. And finally, we also have the High Street X Fund. So if you are from an area that has a town team, maybe led by an MP, working with the council, and you have the most improvement within 1 year, there's £1 million coming your way by way of a prize. So I think the Portas project has actually shocked everyone in politics about how so many of our towns were on the endangered list, and we hadn't really picked up on that in Westminster. But tonight is called Beyond Portas. I think we've done quite a lot already, but I want to talk about how we can also go beyond Portas review. One of the towns I represent has a fantastic market, Darwin Market, brilliant food, fruit and vegetables, and all sorts of other specialist foods. But that town also has an application in for a large supermarket at the moment. Now the town is opposed to that supermarket, but I can guarantee one thing. If that supermarket is built, no matter what people say now, no matter what people do now, it will be full. A few weeks after it's opened, every car parking space will go, and the market will be on its knees or deserted. So actually we have to be realistic and say, supermarkets are giving people something they want. How can our town centres reflect that and continue to give people what they want and compete with those major retailers? So some of the things they can do. Portas review suggested very helpfully, free parking. But also we've got to look at other ways of bringing people into our towns. For example, if your local authority can no longer afford to put a Christmas light display on to drag everyone with their children into the town centre, get a fairground in, get a travelling fair to come in the week before Christmas and do rides for children so you can get people into the town centre. The government will have to address this also through laws. The planning system and the taxation system need to be changed to favour the town centre. And town centres are going to have to change. We will see over the next 10, 15, 20 years a change in the way we use our town centre. We will actually use custody to make it easier to turn commercial property into residential properties, bringing communities back into the heart of our town. Also, people will start to work much more locally. I could commute into Manchester when I was working there, but it was like the M66 motorway, the most congested motorway in the country, is like the 4-lane car park. If I had a local live-work space taking benefit of things like cloud computing so I could no longer have to commute, I think I will be happy to work in the town centre, and I think that is a real future for them. Also, I think markets continue to have a huge role to play. We've heard about towns making stores available for £10 a week so you can try your business. That is the incubator of our future entrepreneurs who get a stake in our town, who are going to stay there, work there, and grow their business. And one final area I would like to focus on, which I think has really damaged our town centres, is vacant rates on commercial property. Empty shops, which are subject to vacant rates, dissuade landlords from investing in that property. They have a holding cost. It's the sort of catch-22. They can't afford to invest in the property because they're paying vacant commercial rates. But if they don't invest in the property, they can't entice a tenant in. So I think we really need to look at doing something about that and giving that relief to landlords to enable them to invest back again in our town centres. And while I don't want to do anything which is going to offend our sponsors this evening, who provided us with great canapes, I think another thing we have to be very careful of, businesses in my constituency contact me about, is a number of charity shops going into our town centre. Now, they do fantastic work. I wouldn't criticise them for one moment. But traders who are there selling new products, often against a charity shop who may also be selling new products, regard that as not being a level playing field. And actually trying to save rates has encouraged landlords to give charity shops space in town centres for free. Not charging them a rent, for free. So I think there's lots more that we as a government should be doing. But it's not actually just about central government. Local government has a huge role to play. And those of you in this room who are councillors, I would encourage you to become involved in your town team, back your town centre and back your local businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake. I've particularly found your thoughts on the local live-work space interesting in the light of new technologies and changes which are being made every day to our local spaces. So thank you. Our next speaker is Warren Alexander from the Charity Retail Association, answering the challenge that I think Jake posed there. The Charity Retail Association represents over 350 members, and within them over 7,000 charity shops in the UK. Over to you, Warren.
Thanks very much. I'm delighted to have this opportunity today, this evening, to really talk about the way that charity shops have and continue to contribute to the economic life of high streets. I think, ladies and gentlemen, that it's important to remember that nostalgia is probably the biggest enemy of the high street. We're not going to go back to the times when there were no supermarkets. As you say, supermarkets take business away. Nevertheless, people do like supermarkets, they shop in them. Neither are we going to get away from the internet, which increasingly is taking business. And there certainly does need to be a vision for high streets. And I think it's a vision that involves the way people live now, of what people want to do with their lives, and how people want to use their high streets. We know there has been a squeeze on living standards over the past few years. And when people do choose to spend money, they're choosing very carefully. And increasingly, they're choosing not to spend it on the high street. According to figures we've got from ONS retail sales, just over 8% of retail sales now take place on the internet. And according to the Portas review, 31.5% of spending takes place in out-of-town shopping centres. Now clearly, if about 40% of retail trade is now taking place away from the high street, there have to be interesting, innovative, exciting ideas to bring people back. They mentioned a number of things, and from the point of view of our members, because we also want bright, vibrant, diverse high streets, issues like parking and the ability for people to park their car, go for a stroll on a local high street, and spend some time there without worrying about running back to their car, are very important points in encouraging people to use their high streets more effectively. One of the interesting points you make is about the perceived competition that charity shops offer to other shops selling new goods on the high street. And I think there really is a bit of a myth about this, with all due respect. Most charity shops sell no more than 2 or 3% of goods that are new. The average across the country is 8%, and that is skewed to an extent by the sale of Christmas cards and seasonal goods. The qualification for charities to get rate relief is that they sell wholly or mainly donated goods, and that is the way charity shops make their living. They are not in competition on new goods. There's no question of that. And as far as taking the shops on the high street are concerned, very, very few charities actually have shops that are rent-free. It's a very small proportion. The majority of them are paying the commercial rent. And what is most interesting, most of the shops tend to be in secondary, hard-to-let locations and are almost, I emphasise almost, never in competition with other people to take the shop. So by and large, charity shops are the only potential tenant for a number of empty shops, and the result of sometimes making it more difficult for charities to take shops through various methods that have been suggested over the past year or two is that there will be more empty shops on the high streets, and none of us want to see that. Charity shops have a place on the high street as part of the community. 180,000 people volunteer in charity shops, an important opportunity for lots of people, whether it be older people, unemployed people, people looking for jobs, to take part in community life, learn skills, and very often get back into the workplace. Some of our members, many of our members in fact, operate approved schemes to help people get back into full-time work. 17,000 paid jobs are part of charity shops. So the contribution charity shops are making to the community is large. They recognise the role they have in the community, and they are liked by the community. Something like 60% of people on lower incomes depend on charity shops for goods that they can afford, clothes, toys, etc. And we are increasingly seeing that middle-class parents, what are called in the media the squeeze middle, are turning to charity shops as a place where they can afford to go and buy Christmas and birthday presents for their children, as well as clothing. Charity shops are an important source of goods for lots of people who otherwise couldn't go shopping. But most importantly, as far as the high street is concerned, they are increasing footfall in many areas. We know anecdotally of instances where charity shops have opened on run-down high streets and shopping parades. The charity shop has been successful, footfall has increased, other tenants take empty or sometimes derelict units, and a high street can be transformed. At the moment this is anecdotal, but we are going to be investing in the next year in a piece of research to actually evidence this and produce numbers. Charity shops are a well-loved resource on the high street. They provide diversity, they provide opportunities for more people to come and shop, and they reinvest in the community, not only by investing in the shops themselves, on average £30,000 when they move into a new shop, but they are reinvesting the profits they make in services for the local communities. They are part of an important, diverse high street. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Warren. I think one of the most interesting things about charity shops in particular is their multifunctional aspect as well. I mean, volunteering, skills development, as well as being social spaces, as well as the retail function. So perhaps it's interesting to see how you can use that model and apply it to other retail businesses as well. Our last panellist this evening is John Howell MP. John is the PPS to the Leader of the House of Commons, and John became the Member of Parliament for Henley in June 2008. He is the architect of the Coalition Government's Reforms and Planning System, having been the principal author of the Open Source Planning Green Paper for the Conservatives. John, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. The Portas Review is a cultural document, an iconic cultural document. It set out some very clear objectives for helping to develop the high street. But let's not get away from the fact that this is a Conservative conference, this is not the Labour Party conference, and that there are some important things to bear in mind when we talk about the high street and how we want it to develop. We're not in a situation where we can force shops to open in a high street. We're not in a situation where we can force people to shop in shops that have opened in a high street. So there's got to be a bit of give and take in this argument, and that was part of the reason why we kept the chapter on the high street as part of the National Planning Policy Framework, so that when councils come to put their plans together for the area, they have to take into account what is required in order to keep high streets vibrant and full of life. But it's not the job of district councils or borough councils to run what those high streets should be. That should really be the job of the neighbourhoods that are putting together the neighbourhood plans that are going to decide where the housing and other development is going to go, the design of it, and things like that. So there's been quite a bit of confusion, I think, so far about where who is responsible for taking this forward. Now, there were three words in Mary Portas's review: service, specialism, and connectivity. And these are all three important for determining what sort of retail you're inviting in. The service part of it is something that you need to keep in mind to determine how you're going to deliver the service. I went into a town centre recently to buy it was actually a chip card for this iPad, and the firm that I went into insisted that I had a customer experience. I didn't want a customer experience. What I wanted was to go in and buy a chip for this iPad. I didn't have very much time. I didn't want to faff about at all with this, but it was totally incapable of accommodating my wishes within that town. So when it comes to looking at towns, I have two in my constituency. I have Henley itself, which has a few charity shops in it, not that many. It has virtually no empty shops whatsoever. Now, it is a town that has wall-to-wall festivals from March through to October. It's a hardship posting, but somebody's got to do it, and it's fallen to me to do it for now. But it has that ability for you to just nip in, nip out, to go in, attractive designs, to make sure that you are attracted by the town. In Tame, it is going through the other town in my constituency. It is going through its neighbourhood planning process, and the way in which it is doing this is focusing on what sort of things need to. But the first thing it's decided is that it wants to be a market town where everyone concentrates in on the centre of the town. So therefore, it has to decide how it can help to help shape the makeup of those areas. And I know we've got some representatives from the town here today who will say a few words a bit about that in a little while. The main way in which the government saw this being taken forward, as I said, was neighbourhood planning. Neighbourhood planning is a way of defeating the socialist system of planning that we inherited from 1947 by allowing communities to shape the areas in which they live through where the houses and developments go, and also the design. And it is very important that if you're going down that route, that you do take a view, and you're a town going down that route, you do take a view of the town centre as part of that. So, housing growth too is critical to the development and the success of the town centre. It's a rough estimate. We are the size of a community goes down by about 10% every 10 years as we get smaller households. So unless you build more houses in these areas, there are going to be fewer people there to support the local high street. And really, the conclusions are that yes, there are certain things that government can do to reduce regulation, to help to focus on providing the right sort of framework for businesses to go there, but actually it's down to the equivalent of use it or lose it. It's about the businesses themselves that are going into these areas that need to be sharp, they need to be specialist, they need to be focused on the connectivity between them and between other businesses, and they need to be just that sort of mix that can support the development of communities as they develop over the next few years.
Thank you very much, John. And I do agree that government has an enabling role to play here in sort of providing the right framework, but quite often, these sort of things are being done and can be done very, very, very well, as we've seen. I'm going to go straight to questions because I'm aware that Jake has to leave us soon, and there is a mic behind you, so if I can see hands, please. This gentleman over here, and then the one next to him. Thank you.
Yeah, I beat it. North Yorkshire. Councillor Mike Jordan, Section 106. We need to free this up. I'm pulling my hair out. I have a village of 3,000 houses, and we have got a planning application in for another 720. So that's a 25% increase. I would like them to agree to 25% affordable housing, which would release money to improve the village. However, officers have said we've got to go with 40%. This will mean that no money can be released by the developers who are happy to do it for the village, to sort the village centre out, to sort the facilities for the village. It's absolutely crackers the way we're working at the moment. There doesn't seem to be any logic behind it at all. And when they tell me that the main reason for it is that it's got to be, whatever we do has got to be related to the project. Well, if you've got 720 houses going in to an area of 3,000, you've got a 25% increase in the properties, then logic would suggest that it is related. If you improve the village centre, that allows the people to use the village centre. Because at the moment, if they don't, what people will do is they will continue, as they are doing, to go to Leeds or York to do the shopping. They won't go local. So we end up with a dormitory town. And I really urge MPs to sort this out because it's absolutely crackers.
Thank you. And the gentleman next to you? Thank you.
Yeah, you probably gathered County Council further bit, but not the Yorkshire County Council. Some 20 odd years ago, I did chair charity shops for one of the large organisations. And I would dispute something you said, Warren. Certainly, I know at that time we had 25% new products. And I know also that I used to get various, to my managing director of the shops, used to get various companies, large companies, ringing us up and saying, we want to close on Saturday, can you move in on Friday? And that used to happen. And the biggest complaint we get is the number of charity shops. And I think there should be a limit to charity shops. I do agree with you, they do provide a service, but at the end of the day, I didn't quite agree with Rory what you said. I think our biggest problem, in quite honestly, in market towns is our national shops. They do nothing to help the economy. They open and close. When you want to try and get them to do anything to support what you're trying to do, it's always, well, it has to come from London. We only get a limited budget. We can't give you any money towards any, say, Christmas activities or whatever it may be. And that is a standard answer you always get. And that's the biggest problem we have, I think, in market towns.
Thank you. Do you have a question as well for the panel?
I think that's basically the question, is how do you get your national shops to give you support? I mean, the little local shops, little independent shops will always give support. If I do a Christmas brochure, I do every year, I'll always get advertising from the small shops. But when it comes to your Burtons, your Dorothy Perkins, your Boots and all those sort of people, the answer always is no, it has to come from the national office. We even had one big retailer say, we'll give you £10,000 towards remarketing where I live, which is Ripon. If I chat you 4 years later, we're still waiting for a penny out of that £10,000.
Thank you. And do I have one more question? The gentleman, if you could keep it short as well. Thank you.
Shortish, because we bucked the trend. I am from Tame in Oxfordshire in John's constituency, and we are undergoing neighbourhood planning process at the moment. But we have probably the perfect market town. We have one large and two medium supermarkets, either in or well connected to the town centre. We've had 98% retail occupancy throughout the recession. We are mostly independent traders, very few national chains. We have a thriving market, which the market traders themselves say is the best in the southeast of England. Yes, we have not one, but two annual fairs in the town centre. Last weekend was our annual food festival with 20,000 visitors. We've got everything right, but we haven't. We're still worried, because we know that retail is changing, we know that online shopping and all the rest of it is there. But I think probably our biggest challenge is how to attract the type of retail that we don't have. For example, we are a town in which a teenager can't buy clothes. There isn't a single shop that caters for that market. So it's attracting, it's not filling our high street, it's filling it with the right sort of retail to fulfil the needs of the residents as well as the visitors.
Thank you very much. So we have a question on section 106 and affordable housing, one on national shops, and one on attracting the right type of retail. Jake?
If I can just start with attracting the right type of retail, I think that was actually one of the very good ideas in the Portas project, which is making either market space or vacant commercial shop premises available to young entrepreneurs. I know a guy in my constituency who prints t-shirts. They say something different every week. I hope at the end of this week it'll say, very conservative, but they say something different every week, and he goes and sells them to all the young people in Rottenstall, the town I represent. He has one of these weekly lists on a market stall. He couldn't take a shop on. He's only 17. You encourage those young retailers and entrepreneurs into your town centre, and they will start to sell things that young people want because they understand them. In relation to the charity shops and getting national shops to back the towns, that really encapsulates the problem we have with our town centres. Asda doesn't have as much of a stake in ensuring that your town centre grows and succeeds, or any other major retailer for that matter, as does a local shopkeeper who may have a family business which has been there for 30 or 40 years. So it is incumbent upon large retailers, where they do go into the town, to make sure that they are doing all they can to support local charities, local organisations and local businesses. And just also to pick up on your point on charity shops, I think you acknowledge, and I certainly acknowledge, what a fantastic contribution they have to make to our town centre. But where I represent, we've been badly hit by the recession. It's the northwest, there's a lot of vacant shops, and you've just got to make sure that balance is right. People won't go to town centres if all they have is charity shops, so you've got to get that balance right. And finally, on the point of planning, I was so lucky to be on the panel with John Howell, who will answer your question.
Thank you. Warren?
I'm certainly not going to talk about any planning 106, I do know what it is, thank you, candidly. I do think that it is an interesting point that, in a way, planning can very much be the key, and local planning. I would suggest there are a number of charity shops that sell very good teenage clothes because young people like the vintage clothes that charity shops sell. But the point about the number of charity shops, the quantity of new goods that they sell and the rent they pay is indisputable, candidly, and we'd be happy to share our data with you. Well, it might have been true 25 years ago, it's certainly not true today, and there are a number of reasons why it's not true. On new goods, they simply are not terribly profitable, so therefore charity shops are cutting them out and no longer selling them. And on location and rent, most charity shops will only open on certain locations. They're simply not interested in going into a shop merely because the rent is low or zero. So charity shops have a huge stake in successful high streets and will work and are happy to work with other town centre organisations to develop diversity.
Thank you, Warren. And John?
Well, let me start with the section 106, since Jake has nicely dropped me into the planning role on this. Presumably, your officers are telling you it's got to be 40% because that's what your policy is. Well, are you...
No, the policy is up to 40%,
right,
but it depends
fine.
on circumstances.
Fine, but it's your policy.
Yeah.
Are you a man or a mouse, sir? Go and change your policy. Go and change your policy. No. Hang on a minute. Let me finish. This is if you want to have a flexible Section 106 policy, the consultation on that finished today. Finished today. So I hope you contributed to that. On the Section 106 topic. If you want to have a 25% policy for that area, change the policy and lead the council. That's what you were elected for.
Yes, I am absolutely correct. And we've got a flexible policy on it up to. And what the rules are is that if the developer can afford 40%.
No, the 40% doesn't exist. So scrap the 40%. Scrap the 40%. Put in your own figure for that. Change the policy to get the thing working again. That's the way that we've got to deal with this. For too long, councils have been run by their officials. They should not be run by their officials. They should be run by the very people like you who stood for election, particularly to help run the councils. And that's really where we've got to get back to. On the charity shops, I think the charity shops are filling in a gap that is there. I see them in my own area. They come in, they fill a gap when an empty shop does occur. But if there was a thriving retail section there wouldn't be any room for excessive numbers of charity shops that are there. And just to pick up on the point about Tame and its neighbourhood plan, I think it's going absolutely in the right direction. I would say that, wouldn't I? But it is going in the right direction, and I think it will manage to take into account the fact that yes, in a lot of businesses, the consumer is buying online. You can buy online. I could buy online tonight, and it will be delivered to my home tomorrow. Now that comes back to this question of service. If you look at the number of hours and the type of hours that a retail business is running, it closes at lunchtime. It closes at lunchtime. When are we all free? At lunchtime to go shopping. Why do businesses close at lunchtime? Why do retail businesses close at lunchtime? They do close at lunchtime, Nick. They do close at lunchtime. And why do they work 9 to 5? Why do they work 9 to 5? I'm not free at 5 o'clock. I'm free at 7 o'clock. Why don't they start late and work late in order to take into account the way in which people work and live and take advantage of the communities in which they reside? It's thinking like that and encouraging them to think like that is actually going to make the difference to the town centres.
Thank you, John. And I think those criticisms are also reflected in criticisms of high street banks. So perhaps there is something to be said there as well. Can I have another round of questions, please? We have one arm over there.
Hi, it's Alison Erdley from Action for Market Towns. Do you think the ongoing investment, perhaps unfettered investment into the city regions, is increasing the number of businesses that want to locate in that area because it's easier and there's more money for them to do so, and increasingly getting at cultural and other social amenities to move to those areas to the detriment of our county and market towns? And what can be done about that?
Thank you. And do we have someone behind as well?
Clive Whittaker, Hampstead and Kilburn. I just wondered if we're going to enable local authorities to support the development and the life of their local town centres, are we at some point going to have to grasp the nettle of local authority financing? Because it seems to me that there is a conflict of interest here in that because we've deprived local authorities of so many orthodox methods of financing, we force them into this position where they have to scrape every possible source of income from every possible opportunity. One of those, for example, is parking, where the drive for local authorities to extract every inch of income from local people in terms of parking actually is in direct opposition to their objective in encouraging people to visit local parades and town centres. Just one example there, Epsom and Leatherhead. In Epsom, they have pretty stiff parking regulations, and the town centre is a wasteland in the evenings. A few yobbers around, that's about it. Leatherhead have taken a much more enlightened approach. Don't know how they've paid for it, but they have, in the high street, motorists able to park at any time in the evening, I think after 6 p.m. The restaurant trade is flourishing. There's a whole mix of people now who come into the the town centre in the evening. Crime is down, and it's a nice place to to go, and local businesses are showing the signs of that. So there just seem to be two separate drivers, the cost driver and the development driver, and they seem to be in opposition a lot of the time.
Thank you very much. And just in front?
Oh, thank you. John Howell mentioned about the consultation on the 106. As a councillor and vice chairman of the North Area Clans at Cheshire East, what is that you're mentioning? Because it's not come to us.
Thank you. Jake?
Picking up firstly about whether driving money into our city regions is taking money away from our fantastic markets and county towns. I don't think so. I think that actually we need both. We need successful cities and we need successful market towns. They often offer different goods and can complement each other. And particularly I think in terms of markets, they offer small quantities of goods. So if you don't want to go and buy 5 chicken breasts, you can go to a local market and buy 1 chicken breast. So I think they cater for different consumers. What I do think drives both consumers and business away from both our cities and market towns are out-of-town shopping centres. And I think we've seen far too many of these open up over the last 30 years, actually. And I think that we should look at more controls of out-of-town shopping centres and planning permissions and a town centre first policy, both for our market towns and for our cities. Just raising the point on parking, I mean the Portas review was very clear about trying to provide free parking. It's a great way of getting people back into our towns, and actually that's the only way we can compete with out-of-town shopping centres, because they provide acres upon acres of free parking. But it is difficult for local authorities at the moment. They are under unprecedented budgetary pressures. I don't think they've ever had to cut their budget since the First War. But they need to find new ways of finding that money. And the localisation of business rates may give them the opportunity to say, well, actually, look, let's not charge for parking. Let's have a really successful business and retail sector in our borough and get the business rates. So I think that's one way that they could look at doing it.
I think you make the point that out-of-town shopping centres are the real issue in taking people away from both town centres and big city centres for shopping. And I think that links up very much with the question the gentleman at the back asked about the financing of local councils and issues like parking. Because it is about convenience, and it is about people's ability to go and do their shopping. People like out of town because they can go, they can park their car, and they're not hassled about that. And giving local authorities the ability to make decisions locally about rate and income and so on does appear on the surface at least to be an intelligent way of enabling local councils to handle their own planning on these issues according to local conditions. The rating issue is very interesting, and I think we as the Charity Retail Association certainly support the British Retail Consortium's Fair Rates campaign. We think that's very important that there be fair rates for shops to enable them to compete more easily and to invest more easily in their businesses. But I've got an interesting statistic here that was put together by an accountancy firm called Mitchell Charlesworth last year. And they said that across the nation, 41% of small businesses that are eligible for business rate relief actually claim it. Only 41% are claiming it. There's lots of opportunities for businesses to reduce their rate burden, which I think is important because it's a big cost in running a small business. I know my father ran a small shop on a high street in suburban North London. But enabling councils to make the decisions about what suits them through the rates, I think could be a very, very important move.
Yeah, let me start with the second question first. The answer to the question is yes. And I can just stop there, really. We are seeing access to a whole range of new finance for local councils. We have the significant percentage of the community infrastructure levy that will be given to those communities conducting a neighbourhood plan to disperse on whatever they wish. Are totally unring-fenced within the community, and well, there'll no doubt be arguments between parish and town councils and their district and borough councils about whether the new homes bonus which is the incentive being given to encourage councils to allow new housing to be developed, whether some of that should come down to the local community as well. So yes, is the answer to that, and there is plenty of money about for doing this. So my advice is not to let your district or borough council say, oh, we've got no money, we can't do anything about this. They are stuffed with money. They are getting money hand over fist from this government, despite the recessionary nature of the times in which we live, and that money needs to be brought down to the local level to deal with problems like this. On the question of investment in city regions, no, I don't think that's going. I don't think that is helping. I don't think that is hindering the development in the areas that we need this sort of money to be invested in. And I say that really because anyone is going to that is looking for a business opportunity is going to look for a business opportunity, whether it's in the city region or not. And finally, the Section 106 was, as far as I understood it, it was a consultation on whether Section 106 could be renegotiated given the belt-tightening times in which we live, and which finished today.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions, please? No? I might ask the panel a question then. I've noticed that we've talked a lot about retail and planning. What do you both have to say about the other services and facilities on the high street? We published a report earlier this year called Clubbing Together, which looks at how we can achieve more group activity in society and how we harness group activity to catalyse other forms of civic activity. So I'm thinking of, as well as commercial premises, leisure spaces, cafes, social activity, and perhaps how private businesses can be encouraged to intersect more with those sorts of organisations. Unless anyone else has thought of a question, we'll go straight to the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's clearly important to try and encourage, simply to try and encourage more people to go onto their high street to use it, whether that be during the day or in the evenings as well. From the perspective of charity shops, they are increasingly being used as community hubs for various purposes. Some of our members that are providing services to the homeless, people with mental illnesses and so on, are using them as advice centres, resource centres and so on. And that means that the shop itself becomes a community service. We consider that to be very, very important. To a great extent, the fact that an average charity shop has 20 volunteers turns it into a community hub as well, because it's providing service to lots of people. Sometimes they're older people who, this is a good form of social contact, keeps them bright and alert, physically active, younger people who are looking for jobs. So bringing more people on and looking at the high street in a more enterprising way, I think is important. And there have been lots of initiatives where empty shops have been used as pop-up art galleries, pop-up community centres, and to fill these spaces, because when they're empty, it perhaps attracts vandalism, drives down rents. What we really want on the high street is as many of the units to be as busy as possible, and units that are going to bring people onto the high street, in and out of the shops, to increase trade.
Thank you. And I think a number of retailers have also looked at moonlighting of space that isn't. It doesn't have to be empty space. It could also be commercial space, which is used for other things after hours. John?
Well, you know, when I look at our market towns, there is plenty of civic pride around in those towns. What those towns need is the leadership in order to catalyse that civic pride into allowing them to encourage the development of the right sort of retail. And it's that leadership that we are sadly lacking. Now, it may be that there's plenty of leadership there, but it is beneath the surface, hasn't been allowed to come through, has been sat on by district or borough officials, as we heard earlier, it may be that it's all of those things, but unless that leadership comes through and puts the officials back into their box and says this is how we're going to do it, then we're not going to get anywhere with this. But my feeling is that the leadership is beginning to come through. It is taking up the enormous opportunities that are being offered here in order to develop the sort of towns that we want.
And John, as our only MP left on the panel, what do you think of the MPs and town teams initiative? Do you think that that is the sort of answer to leadership? Or?
I think it's partly the answer to leadership. There is only so much that people like me can do. It comes down to the mayors of the towns, to the local councillors in the towns, to really stand up for their towns and to have a very good focus on where they want to drive.
And I would say perhaps community initiatives as well, acting in a leadership capacity. There's some great initiatives such as the Totally Locally campaign, which is campaigning for supporting local growers, producers, services, such as local farmers and furniture makers and bakers, that sort of thing. There's also some really interesting projects such as I think it's the Incredible Edible project, where they grow food all around the sort of local high street and town centre, and it really creates a different type of interaction with local people. Do we have any other questions? Philip?
Yeah, sorry.
Can you wait for the mic?
Oh, yeah. Normally. Yes, sorry, I came in late, so you've probably already discussed this, in which case apologies. But I used to live near Spitalfields Market. I don't know if any of you know it. And it's a wonderful restored panoply, all the great sort of brands and shop fronts of our high street, and it's almost always completely empty. And the only time at which it's not empty is when it's got the tiny little micro businesses, micro traders in the middle with stuff that you can't get from anywhere else. And then it's absolutely packed. And what I think is interesting is we're producing a shopping experience where everything is the same, so nobody needs to go anywhere. And when you have something like that, you tend to go to these vast out-of-town type places. So, and again, I'm sure you've already discussed this, but what seems to me to be absolutely manifestly needed is to use that public space for new market entrants, for local traders, local producers, and to create an almost permanent sense of a market in a market town. And I suppose my question is what can we do to incentivise that, using the provisions in the localism bill? What can we do within the repertoire of those who currently own, and what is still needed to facilitate that? Because I used to live in Lancaster, and again, the town was only really packed when the French came over with the French market. We never seemed to deliver an English market. So that would be my question. And again, apologies if it was said before, but what can we do to create that, the micro in the macro, as it were?
Thank you. And I think there was another question here. The lady just here. Thank you.
Again, apologies if this question's already been asked. In our local town, there's been quite a lot of empty retail spaces because they can't afford the rents anymore. Are there opportunities for business rates and rents to go down if there's a lot of empty properties on the high street, to encourage people to actually stay going to the high street rather than going to the next town?
Thank you. And this gentleman here, please.
Thank you. Jeff Walsh. I'm a Conservative councillor in an ancient market town at Pontefract in West Yorkshire. Leader of the Conservatives on Wakefield Met. One of the challenges that we have as a market town is that over time a lot of the traditional businesses that were there, family businesses, have sold up, and they've sold up to a variety of national organisations in one form or another. And the national retailers that we've got predominantly have supervisors in their stores, as opposed to people that have got any sort of management authority. so that they can't do anything, and typically it tends to be their sort of head office. How do we engage? Well, sorry. We are engaging with, and I'm leading a business and town centre management group. We are engaging with some of the bigger local businesses, and Marks and Spencer are on side, and that's really great, and WH Smith are with us, and Boots are with us. But how on earth do we get to some of these organisations that are hidden somewhere off 200, 300, 400 miles away, or in another country, and get them to engage? Any thoughts?
Thank you. Shall we take John's thoughts first?
Yeah. Let me pick up your last point, because at the depth of the recession, I held a number of networking events for businesses in and around Henley. And the first one, about 150 people came along to this. They were all businesses that did business there, and virtually no one knew anyone else in that business. They had never thought about these other companies as competitors, as suppliers, as any number of different relationships that they could have thought about. And I think that one of the good things that arose out of that was a business partnership, because we don't have a chamber of commerce or anything like that that is there to reach those businesses that conventionally you can't get to. So my suggestion would be to go down that route with. Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, keep on with it, because it will get there. There is rate relief. The relief has been doubled. Councils should be applying for it. We just heard that most of them don't. The micro in the map. I think that we've got trapped into seeing opening hours as a one-size-fits-all. And we were discussing before you came in that what you need to do is to think about what is it that I need from the opening hours of the shops in my area. And I don't shop 9 to 5. I'm stuck in Parliament from 9 till 9 the next day, actually. But when I'm home, I tend to be out doing things between 9 and 5. I want to go shopping 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. And that's the way of being able to introduce into that mix the variety that will allow the spaces to be used when they are being used. When they're not being used, then I think there are plenty of other initiatives in markets that can be brought forward to be used for them.
I like the sort of nighttime markets.
Yes.
Lovely idea.
Yes.
Thank you, John. And Warren.
Spitalfields is a great example of what was a really exciting, brilliant, vibrant, different retail space cauterised into something that who wants to go there anymore. And Spitalfields has that wonderful Hawksmoor church around the corner. It's worth going to see on its own. But in a free country where you're allowed to go out and trade and build shops and develop land, it's very difficult, I suppose, to legislate against what happened to Spitalfields. I think consumers have a lot of power. The planners ought to have a lot of power in order to incentivise the kinds of businesses that you're talking about, the small suppliers, the small enterprises. And it does link in with rates, and we hear that rates relief is available. But I do think it's really important for councils to understand that they do have a significant role in making it easier for independent people to open up in business in their neighbourhood. If they genuinely want that to happen, they've got to work to do it. It's no good sitting back and saying, oh, we're constrained, oh, we're constrained. They do have lines to politicians who can make decisions. They do have local decision-making powers, and they should use that. Where I live, I'm lucky enough to live in a beautiful area of London called Bloomsbury. Around the corner is where I live. There used to be a great cheese shop, and most importantly, they sold a lot of English cheese. And England makes the most. People here from Yorkshire, one of the best countries in the world for cheese. A large supermarket opened because there was a redevelopment of a rather derelict shopping mall. The G-Shop closes. Now, is there more choice for me, or isn't there? Actually, there isn't more choice, but there are a number of high street brands. My feeling is that unless councils are willing to actually take real action to make it easier and better for small independent shopkeepers to open up their shops, use whatever powers they've got, ask for more powers where necessary, it's not going to happen. And opening hours is a great example. Service is a great example. You know, you go into so many, particularly multiple shops, you get lousy service, you don't want to go back. You go to an independent retailer, they're delighted to do business with you, but they have to be offered the opportunity. And, you know, I represent charity retailers. Charity retailers also know that unless they offer good service, they're not going to get business. And it's certainly true on the general high street. If we want diversity, it's up to local people to shout loudly for it. It's up to local councils to do something about it. And too often we sit back, we moan about the big supermarkets opening on the periphery, but we go there and shop. And the only way to stop them is not to go there and shop. Patronise your local stores. If you don't patronise them, they're going to close.
Thank you, Ryan. We have one more question at the back.
My apology, I came very late. David Hearn, Oxford, Western, Abingdon. And apology also if it offends the sensibility of Warren. Has the question about unfair advantage in charity shops already been discussed? Yes.
Yes.
I'll shut up.
I'm quite happy to talk to you though outside of this. You know, slings and arrows of outrageous fortune and all that.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I will just ask the panellists to make a final comment. Perhaps you could identify what maybe the one thing that you think is the most important for the future of the high streets today.
In my view, the most important aspect for the high street is to give local councils the ability to make decisions that will enable independent retailers to open up on them. It is up to local people to do this. We are too centrally planned in these issues, and I'm delighted to see that there is a government now that is looking at these issues. The Portas review hopefully will help that, but it is down to people actually taking the power into their hands and doing something about it and not sitting back.
Thank you, Warren and John.
All I would say is amen to that.
That's very pithy. Thank you very much to the audience for coming tonight and staying to the end, and to our Yorkshire contingent. We seem to have a lot of Yorkshire people in the room. So thank you very much, and do come to all of ResPublica events tomorrow. There are a few orange guides around the room.